Okay, we're going.
Could you please state your name, age, and where you are from?
Okay. I'm Mark King, and I was born here in Cordova in 1955.
And so did you grew up here for your whole life?
Yep. Never left, except for go to trade school for a few months. I mean, I went for other places in the state and stuff like that, but I always came back. You know, was never gone for probably more than 4 or 5 months.
And how many are in your family?
I have one brother and one sister, and now I have 2 sons and a daughter and 4 grandsons.
Do any of them live in Cordova?
Just one, my oldest son, Kyle, still lives here. Works for Alaska Airlines.
So could you tell us a little bit about how Cordova was when you were a kid?
There was no TV. It was all dirt roads and wooden sidewalks. And a lot of old timers, would come to Cordova to spend their winters in the hotels that were here. We had big hotels with big lobbies, but they didn't have cooking places in the hotels, so they had all eat in a restaurant. So we had some really good restaurants that were open a lot. I mean, you can go there any time of day and get a piece of pie and a cup of coffee or something like that.
What changes have you seen in Cordova since when you were?
Oh, lots of changes. I've seen it all. I mean, we had the town fire, I think, was in 1962, where half of Main Street burnt down. It was either 62 or 63, and then 1963, and then 1964 we had the earthquake. And I was, 64, I would have been 9 years old. And they wouldn't let us kids, we lived up on the hill, they wouldn't let us go downtown. And so I was up by the old high school watching as the town was burning. And anyway, they put out this alert that they were going to dynamite a certain section, try and put the fire out so it wouldn't continue on down the street towards the Alaskan. And up on that old high school building, there was kind of a parking lot up on the top part in a square corner, so I was right behind that corner when they set the charge off that blew the whole thing sky high. It didn't work, but anyway, I'll never forget that. There was a painting that came whistling right by the corner, and it went across the parking lot down into the Salmon Prairie Brush.
Oh my God.
So I ran over there, and it's got smoke coming off of it. It's all, and to this day, I swear it was Sidney Lawrence.
Oh, wow.
But, what did I know back then? Anyway, I just left it there. But that was kind of the excitement of the town fires, I remember it. And then that was a big change because they redid a lot of Main Street, a lot of the buildings and stuff like that. They put in a bowling alley and new restaurants, bars, and stuff like that. And then the earthquake came along, and then, that was another big change where they put a whole new harbor in and everything. So, and then, I don't remember what year it was, but then Standard Oil caught on fire down there and burned up the, Moorpack, and that whole area was all burned down. They let school out that day when that ocean dock was burning. And
Well, it sounded like you kind of alluded to the you were just saying something about I'll get back to it. Sorry.
okay.
That's why I'm sitting on this side.
All right.
It's good, Rob. Did your family or your house have any damage from the earthquake? Or fire?
Well, after the fire in '63, then they built the bowling alley. And so we had a after-school league, bowling league. And so I was on one of the teams, and we were in the bowling alley. When it started, everybody got strikes. And I took off out of there like this. I mean, I couldn't believe what was going on. I mean, everything was just jerking. I got up on 2nd Street, was running down 2nd Street, and I ran up the hill. Our house was on 4th Street. And the ground was just rolling, and it was like running on the ocean where you'd run off the top of a wave, and there's nothing below you, and I'd hit at the bottom, and then get back up, take off running again. I think I fell down twice, just going up the hill. And I get to the top of the hill where our house is at on 4th Street, and one of the neighbors was hanging on to his pickup. And as it's shaking, the pickup, it's in gear, but it's inching its way towards the hill, and he's on the outside of it. And he's hollering at me, "It's a good one."
It's a good one?
That's what he
It's a
said.
great one.
And anyway, I said, "It's a volcano." And he's going, "What?" I said, "It's a volcano." And he goes, "I think it's an earthquake."
I hope it's an earthquake.
So I got in the house, still going. This is running Main Street, all the way up to 4th Street, in the house. And my mom said, "Get on your knees and pray. This is the end of the world."
Wow.
Uh,
I bet you a lot of people felt like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So was the harbor in response, the new harbor in response to the earthquake? That was what I was thinking.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They kinda
Well,
did that.
they totally restructured the whole harbor after the earthquake. They put in a new breakwater, and then before the earthquake, all the floats were made out of great big spruce trees like that. You know, I mean, for floats. And there was gaps between the sections of floats like that far. You know. So you had to be careful just to get down there to check your boats. And
Wow. I never heard that.
so we used to go down there fishing in the harbor all the time before the earthquake, and we'd catch flounders, crabs, halibut, lingcod, black cod, baby black cod, and all kinds of stuff like that. But we'd get the Torito worms, those red-headed worms off of the floats, and break those open, use those for bait. And one time, me and Kenny Critchen were down there fishing, and over towards APA, they were taking clam deliveries, razor clams, and where the floats was kind of across from where the dock went up by APA Cannery. And anyway, one of the old timers was up there, and he goes, "Hey, you kids, you want some clams for bait?" Yeah, you know. So we're down there, and he's pitching these razor clams, and we're, you know, trying to catch them and everything, and they're bouncing on the dock, going overboard. Anyway, I caught one, and Kenny goes, "Are you all right?" I said, "No." Anyway, I'd laid my hand open from the shell of the razor clam. Yeah. But anyway, they were really good bait. All I had was, I remember I had a Hershey bar of paper to put over the top of it.
Chocolate fixes everything.
Yeah. So I had to go get that. I can't remember. I think they just did a butterfly bandages on it or something. I don't know if it got stitches or not. But where I lived up on 4th Street, Anita Cabanilla was a nurse, and her husband got killed on the, I think it was on the Bering River Bar. He was a gill netter. So she'd take care of the kids, you know, for medical stuff. It's not like you'd go to the doctor, you know. My mom would call her up, "Mark just cut his hand. I'll be right up." You know, or "Mark 6 got a fever," you know. You know, so she would come and doctor me anyway. I was the youngest in my family. So it wasn't like you went to the doctor for every other sniffle. You know, a lot of home treatments.
So, what is your occupation?
You know, my my occupation is I've always been just self-employed, and I always said if I couldn't cut it down, get it off the beach, strangle it, shoot it, and skin it, I'd have been out of a job. Never punched a time clock. So I guess I'm a guide. I got a 100-ton charter license for running boats, and I've fished all the fisheries: herring, salmon, halibut, blackcod, crabs. When I was
still
young.
do. So
I still longline halibut, blackcod, and then when crab fishery was being developed here, I tried to get all my schooling, my high school, to get enough credit so I could get out of school early. That's what I ended up doing. And then when I had enough credits, they wanted me to stay because I was on the basketball team, and I'd had it with the basketball coach. I'm out of here. And so when I went home, my mom's just freaking out. You quit school? I said, no, I got enough credits to graduate. I didn't quit. and I got a job on a crab boat. I think it was 17. And anyway, she goes, we'll see about this when your dad gets home. And so when my dad came home, she was just freaking out. My dad said, well, if you're not going to school, you can't live in the house. I said, I got it covered. He goes, what do you mean by that? I said, I already got my sleeping bag and my rain gear and everything on a crab boat. I'm going crab fishing. And that's what I did. I went crab fishing for the rest of the winter that year.
Was it your senior year or junior year?
It'd be my junior year.
Wow.
Well, my senior year I missed. So,
They don't let us do that anymore.
is that right?
You can graduate early your senior year, but they won't let you graduate early your junior year anymore.
Okay, it wasn't the junior year. It was my senior year then.
Well, no, they might have allowed it then, but
Right.
now they don't allow it.
She
Yeah.
tried to
So did you ever move back in with your parents? Or
Yeah.
was that it?
That was just a short.
You couldn't even
Just a
graduate
threat.
before semester
No, I know.
seniors.
Yeah, they're very strict about it. They won't even let us have a off schedule.
But then the superintendent, Chuck Taylor, or the principal, I can't remember which one he was, he told me, he says, he wanted me to stay to be on the basketball team. And I said, ain't happening. And he says, as long as I'm here, you won't be able to graduate. I said, I got enough credits to graduate. I don't care, you won't be able to graduate. But anyway, he lightened up too, and I was able to walk with my class during graduation.
Wow.
So. And I think Luke Bohr was a junior. He graduated that year too.
Oh my.
Yeah. There wasn't a whole lot of kids that did that, but there's a handful, 4 or 5
Where did you crab at?
out of here.
Just here.
Yeah. We delivered in Seward a lot of times, but it was phenomenal fishing. We were only getting like 4 or 5 cents a pound for the crabs, but we caught a lot of them.
Was Tanner's?
Tanners, yeah. But we got king crab and Dungeness at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Early on there. Yeah. But I did that till I think I was 22 or 20. I got married when I was 23, so I fished crabs almost every winter. Anyway, I'm a real landlubber at heart. That crab fishing was too rough. Let me tell you. It's definitely for a young person because sometimes we'd go 3 days straight without any sleep.
Wow.
Little cat nap here and there.
So how come you never left Cordova? Did you just not, or Alaska really? Did you not want to, or?
Well, I traveled enough to see other places, and I would just get, it's kind of like claustrophobic when I get around a lot of people and a lot of traffic. I thought, these people are out of their minds. And I thought I would, I tried. I went to I can't remember, it was the first winter or the second winter after I got out of school. I went to Ohio, and I went to a welding school because I was going to come back and weld the Alaska pipeline. So I went and took night classes for like 4 months, I think, at Hobart in Troy, Ohio. And so that was quite an experience. I was living in a boarding house and had an big old car that I'd bought for like $200 or something like that. And anyway,
So
got
did
this-
you end up ever helping with the Alaska pipeline?
No, I'm finishing the story.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, I was young and dumb, but they had the Alaska pipeline there, and Hobart was developing a welding machine to weld this pipe automatically. So the instructor, knowing that I was from Alaska, and I told him what I wanted to do, he spent a lot of time with me checking me out on this machine. And so anyway, I was pretty proud of myself. I kind of got certified in Ohio for different types of welding. But when you go, like in Alaska, the certification, in order to be a certified welder, the tests might be different than the ones that are in Ohio. So I, being from the country and going to the city like that, it was kind of nerve-wracking. I'd never been in one of those roundabouts, where city center deals, and I had this big old car, and I'd get in that thing, and I had to get off a certain place to go to where I was going to school. And anyway, I got so fouled up in that thing several times. But anyway, I ended up doing really well in the school, stayed there even through Christmas, and ended up coming back to Alaska, and I stopped in Anchorage. But before I did this, I was still back there. I'll never forget this. There was a place that was making custom suits, and I thought, well, geez, maybe this will be kind of I got to go into an office or something like this. So I had 2 custom suits made with the top coats, and one was a corduroy, like Clint Eastwood would wear or something like that. But anyway, so I had these suits made. And then I went to Anchorage, and I went into this office, and I can't remember the number of the Welders Union, what number it is, the 302. But anyway, I went in there and met this guy there and introduced myself to him. And he goes, "Now, where are you from?" I said, "Cordova." And he goes, "Is that in Oklahoma?" I said, "No, sir." And he goes, "Texas." I said, "No, it's in Alaska. It's right by Valdez." "Oh, okay." And he says, "Now, you were talking about this automatic pipe welder?" I said, "Yeah, I'm all checked out on it, certified in Ohio, and I feel like I'd be a real asset to the building the Alaska pipeline." He said, "Well, you ain't too bright, son." He says, I just want you to know that you've been blackballed from the union. That pipe is going to be welded by hand. I've got all your vital information here, and I guarantee you, you will never be hired in the Alaska pipeline."
Bummer.
So then I pulled the native card. I'm part native. And that didn't work either. It just made him more mad, because there was a percentage of Alaska natives that they're supposed to hire.
Yeah.
And anyway.
Well, not like you meant to do it. That just seems
So anyway, I had
interesting.
the biggest red salmon season I ever had that year that I was supposed to be working on the pipeline. And then I had upgraded my equipment because I made so much money crab fishing. I was able to really get top of the line equipment for my gillnet fishery that I'd fished in my whole life. And so in 1975, I bought a seine operation. So I think I was like 20 years old. And there wasn't very many kids that young, you know, that
Oh
were
my gosh, no way.
that were involved in the seine fishery. And that was
they were crewmen. Probably.
there. I was crewman for 10
Yeah.
years before that or more.
You got your own setup.
I had my own setup. I did so well gill netting that and the guy that I bought my permit from, Bob Lee, knew that I had a big season. I told him that I was interested in buying his operation. I bumped into him on Main Street. He said, "Let's go into the club restaurant here." I went in there. He had the contract all written up
The
and
computer
everything
looked.
slipped over
That's
to
a
me like,
taste of on.
you know. But
That's
anyway,
The green dot's still flying.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's amazing.
yeah.
You were an owner operator at 20 years
20,
old.
yeah. I had a drift boat and permit. And they voted limited entry in that year. And I was going to buy the seine operation, whether it was voted in or not. I mean, I was going to be fishing one way or the other. And I had a special agreement with them. If it went limited entry, they'd pay $18,000 for the permit.
What a hand up.
18,000
Yeah.
for the permits.
So
And how much are those permits today?
I sold it for $180,000.
Yeah. And that's what they're running today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I seined for almost 30 years. And then after the oil spill, I just got pretty disgusted with the price of fish, processors.
So do you have a favorite place in Cordova?
That's a tough question. I got several favorite places.
Oh, you can give us a
You
bunch.
can give us multiple.
Well, Strawberry Point, Boswell Bay, White Shed, Copper River Delta, Organic. Middleton Island has got to be the number one. Yeah, it's beautiful out there.
Here on the wall.
It's really hard beaches to beach comb and stuff like that on, but just the amount of birds and all the activity out there is pretty phenomenal.
Why were you out there? Because I know
Oh,
that's
we were
like
doing some
in the forest.
environmental assessment work. So I went out there, I think, 4 years in a row for like 5 days at a time.
How long ago was that?
Just recently. Yeah, through the tribe. With Clark Pearson.
I know Clark.
What?
Said I know Clark.
Yeah. We should have it them.
Where's that one? Oh. Is there anything that you would like to, or what would you share about Cordova if you're talking to someone from out of town?
You know, it's kind of funny when people from out of town, we used to have a bed and breakfast with 12 beds that me and Sandy ran. And if it was a nice day and the people came here, they'd just come here, get off the jet, never been here before. What do you think the first question they'd ask was?
Why more people do?
Where's the realty office?
Oh.
And then by the time they, we had blowing and raining and miserable fishing and stuff like that, they weren't interested in it. But,
They say, oh.
yeah, tell me the question again.
What would you share about Cordova to someone from out of town?
Golly, there's lots of opportunities. If you're talking to a young person, that's looking to get started in life, it used to be that you had to be a complete idiot if you couldn't make money and make a living living in Cordova, with the fisheries I'm referring to. So, but it's hard nowadays. The price of permits are so high. It's hard for young people to get into the fisheries, whereas, you can start out as a deckhand and stuff like that, work your way into it. But, things are changing. Nowadays, as far as, we used to do all our business to the bank, when it come to buying a house. And then got 2 realtors now here in Cordova. So a young person trying to get a house, there's no bargains anymore because the realtors are the ones that are already contacted about the house being for sale. And they'll either buy it themselves or, or jack the price up for the seller or whatever. And it just makes it tough for young people, to get a good deal in the community for living here. And it's seasonal work here. You got long winters with, more lately with rain and dark weather. It's not the most pleasant area. And global warming, climate change is real. A lot of people say that it isn't. But from my experience here in Cordova, just recently when you got trees this big coming down that had never blown down before, it's different. The wind's coming from a different direction. It's blowing harder than it ever has. So. I lost my train of thought.
So, this is a question that you can give us multiple answers to. What have been some of your favorite experiences?
I don't know, just traveling to different areas. I think if you did a 100-mile radius around Cordova, I've probably been there real close to every place there. And just experiencing the changes, the seasons throughout the year and stuff like that. I always go certain places to get drive. Like I used to like to really check out Power Creek to see how many fish had come in there. Hike back there to the creek. Now you can't even get out there. They got the road blocked off and stuff like that. And Copper River Highway. I used to like to go to the $1 Million Bridge. And I've done a lot of work up the Copper River, so I've been, from here all the way up to Chittenden, up to McCarthy, and up to the Little Toke River, way up country, and seen the headwaters of the Copper all the way to the Gulf and beyond, so I always felt like, if you're going to be a fisherman, you got to know where the fish are coming from, where they're spawning, and where they're growing up, and everything in between, to have an idea what's going on. I get a kick out of people now that are down the Union Hall or fishermen, new fishermen around screaming and hollering about people dip net and stuff like that, and fish wheels running up the Copper River, and they've never even seen one before. So I made a point to do, go to several different places up the Copper and talk to the people that had fish wheels, talk to the dip netters and stuff like that. So get a different perspective, see what their ideas, were and whatnot.
So what decision do you believe has had the most impact on your life?
What decision?
Yeah.
I think it was getting married.
What a sweetheart.
I got married when I was 23. I quit crab fishing, said I'd never do it again. I ended up going about another 10 years. People would fill in, in the middle of winter, they'd call me up and say, we need a deckhand, can you be down the boat in a half hour? It's 2 in the morning. I'll be there in 15 minutes. And then just to stick with what I was doing, it was a great life. I'm still doing it. I'm still commercial fishing, and my own boss. So I guess what I enjoyed most in my life so far.
Do you, Rob mentioned sort of extracurricular activities such as hunting or trapping or stuff like that.
That's
Do you do any
that's
of
such
that?
an intergenerational thing.
I agree.
I've always hunted and trapped ever since I was 6 years old. I had a trap line up on the Evergreen Trail of Critchin's house or up in Mount Eac and down here to the Eac Lake, the pond and slough by the hospital. I used to trap that, catch muskrats, and land otters, mink and weasels and stuff like that. But there wasn't as many people around, and it was extra money. And the other thing that we used to have a junk man when I was a little kid. You had a place where you can sell scrap, lead, copper, and brass and stuff like that. And that was when all of us kids, we ended up on, not all of us, there was about 4 or 5 of us. They had a power line that went up by the ski hill all the way out. I think it went to Humpback Creek. But the part that we salvaged went to Orca Cannery. And we'd go up there, and there's these old telephone poles up there, and we'd either shoot the insulators off and then flip the wire off of the good yard arms, or else they were already falling down, and then we'd make big coils out of it, put it on a pack board, and pack it out of there, and take it to the junk man and make extra money.
Wild Bill.
No, believe it or not, there was a guy before Lanny Merritt. But when Lanny Merritt first came here, him and Ron Cole had a place right where Sabine built that,
Oh, right. Next to Ramey's.
right in the back on that alley road there.
Wow.
And
No, I'm good with time. No,
they'd have
sure.
all this junk all stored back in there, and then we'd go back in there in the middle of the night and then make another run out of it and then sell it to them
Steal it
a
back
week
after
later.
just sold to him. Sell it to him again.
They're good and gone now.
Yeah,
So don't worry
oh,
about it.
Lanny sold
It's not
it.
incriminating.
Right,
What a cool story.
yeah. But then there was this salvage guy that was working for the city. His name was Don Endicott. And he caught on that we were doing this, And anyway, he kind of corked us off. He was hired a guy, and the two of them were up there doing it full time. We'd just go do it when we needed money. The other thing I did before I went fishing on my own is I used to unload tenders and work for Jim Core. He was my next door neighbor. And they had child labor laws. So I think you had to be 16 or something like that to be around heavy machinery. But we'd unload the boats when they came in, and the captain of the boat would have to pay us, and then the processor might reimburse them. But we'd unload all the fish coming into the plant. We used pews back then. They handled an iron point on them, bent, and you had to hit the fish in the head. And it gave you leverage to put them into brailers, and then they'd lift them up on the dock. Well, you get those big king salmon, and they were pretty hard to, when you're, we were tough kids though, but this friend of mine was working with us, and his mother worked in the office, and he was always giving me a bad time about the floor lady. She was the one that took care of the crew. Her name was Hazel Tanstead. And if somebody had something, a little cut or something, he would say, "Why don't you go see Hazel?" And so I had this great big king salmon, and he happened to have his butt towards me, and the pew came out of the fish, and I stuck him right in the butt cheek. And it was surprising how hard it was to pull it back out. I mean, your skin's pretty tough, let me tell you.
Oh, and it had all that fish line,
And,
right?
and it was like you plugged him into electricity. I mean,
You weren't his friend from then on out?
no. But guess what I told him? I said, looks
Go
like
see
you need to go see Hazel. And anyway, we used to make good money. I think we made $10 an hour doing that. And that was a lot of money back in the 60s. You know, it was,
Tell about the gangs. You talked a little bit about the gangs when you tried to come to Yak Lake, going down Lake Avenue, was it?
oh, well, our parents, when all us kids up on the hill, there was Old Town, there was all the homeboys that lived in the boys' home over there. And so, in order to stay out of trouble, we had to use the Evergreen Trail that came down by, went right past Critchen's house up there on 5th Street.
Mhm.
And it was an old wagon trail that came down against the hillside and then came right down to Dick Boer's house there where Louis Albers lives now.
Mhm.
Came out there and then you're right across from the Van Park and the Spit. So we'd pack our outboard motors, canoes, and everything up and down that trail. And then if we got in trouble, right where Brad Showstead lives now, there was a telephone on the corner on that pole that was for public use, but it was more for emergencies, you know. But there would be, in the summertime, there would be 50 to 100 people down there over by Parmeters Beach and on the Spit.
Uh-huh.
You know, everybody swimming. The city had a big raft there with a 15-foot platform on it. You know, where you climb up the ladder and then jump off the
Oh, really?
platform. Yeah. With 55-gallon drums under it.
Which one's Parmeters Beach?
It's right across from the Yak Corporation office. That log cabin, that was.
Kind of a abode.
Yeah, it's actually a log cabin. Fred Pedgill, I think, built it for Parmeter, and then he had a concession stand out in the front, and he also had the theater uptown. And so when everybody was down there, he was swimming in the summer. They were selling soda pop and hot dogs and stuff like that.
Was it not so grown in then? Was it, like now?
Yeah, it wasn't grown in at all.
You
And
know
there-
what he's talking about.
Sort of, I think so.
Area on the other side of the Spit towards town. That whole area.
It's all goofy with
Oh yeah,
Lodi
yeah.
or
Where the bridge is,
No,
like that little
There's
bay
a-
area.
there's
Yeah,
the
it's up.
Yak Corporation office.
Mhm.
If you go straight towards the lake from there, there's an alleyway that goes there now. There's a log cabin on the left. It's not a log cabin anymore. Then there's the FAA building on the right, and there's a road that goes right to the water there, right on that beach.
Okay.
And then the other beach was Hillico Beach, is where the trailer court is now, over by the powder house. We used to walk down that beach over the point, and there was an old village. Yak Village was there, but we'd walk through all those old buildings and then go over the bank. There's a real nice beach there. That's where all the big kids hung out. I went over there a little bit.
So the homeboys would kind of beat up on you guys if you were
It was mostly the Old Town.
old.
Yeah, we just,
Yeah, when
when they, what was that, the West Side Story? When that came out?
Jets and the, right. Is this like
You guys
Kenny
had dance
and
battles?
Jack Hopkins and those guys? Like,
Yeah,
Corinne's crew.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nettie Hansen.
And Nettie Hansen.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like we were scared, but it was like running the gauntlet when we went through Old Town.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Did you ever get?
Kitty and I were running through there one time, and he got an arrow in the shoulder.
Just a target arrow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't a broadhead nasty
No.
razor.
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
be BB guns, okay.
Yeah, the Snoyer boys would come running out with traps.
Oh,
and
the
try and
Snoyers
snap.
from like Yakataga.
Yeah,
Those kids.
that
are
was
rough.
down by Wolf Hill. We'd go down that way and then go down through Old Town.
Oh, man. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Snoyers are tough. They walk all the way from Yakataga to Cordova. Is that true? I've
Maybe
heard
their
rumor.
dad, yeah,
Their dad did.
Paul.
Yeah, Paul.
I asked him. I said, "When you're making those trips like that, what do you eat?" And he goes, "Whatever you can find along the trail and dough gods." I said, "What's a dough god?" Flour and sugar and butter mixed together.
Just in a gob.
Yeah, that was a dough god.
Gut bomb.
Yeah,
It's like the old-fashioned Cliff Bar.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it was kind of interesting because when I first started fishing on my own, which I was pretty young, I think I was 13, and I looked at my kids when they were 13 and thinking that, what my parents let a 13-year-old go out to the Copper River.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a whole different breed back then, but we used to run down Eak Lake and under the bridge and down the river and out onto the flats, to fish. Round Egg Island is where I fished when I was real young. Pulled a net by hand. Didn't have reels. But there would be a whole fleet anchored behind the spit, tied up behind the spit there. Everybody would walk their anchors across and hook them in those logs on the other side,
By Nirvana Park.
Yeah. So there'd be 40 skiffs along that, on the backside of the spit.
Wow.
Staying out of the weather. Everybody winding up. I can remember before the earthquake, the tide used to make Eak River run backwards.
Okay, so
And
the weir was.
There was no weir.
There was no weir
Yeah.
back then.
And I can remember a tide rip coming all the way to Mavis Island from the ocean, all the way up into the lake, was causing a tide rip. It was just backing the fresh water up. That's what it was doing. And then when you were going down the river, there was no alders, there was nothing. It was just a grass flat. And you could see, when you were up, you could see all the way to the...
Oh, those alders have really changed.
Yeah, but you could see to the tender
Wow.
anchorage. You
Out
could
there
see
by
the...
Egg Island.
Yeah, even from the highway, you could see the duck cabins down there.
Wow.
You could see the
Wow.
boats out there, when they had lights on. So that's a
That's a
huge
huge difference.
change.
That's what a couple people have said. Like, that's what Charlotte said too, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That all didn't used to be there, all that brush.
Yeah. I remember stopping at 9 Mile on the Copper River Highway and seeing 3 or 4 brown bears down below the road fishing in that Scott River, come down from Scott Glacier. And all those fish were going up to Scott Lake that doesn't even exist anymore above Elsner Lake because of gravel.
All right.
Flooded that whole thing, pushed all that gravel in there. And there's no more Scott Lake.
Did they have Did they have wireless headsets when you were a kid? My kid just came out. He went and got a glass of water, and he heard nothing that was going on because he has these wireless headsets on.
That's scary.
That probably wasn't something.
I think we just had cotton balls.
That's what I do.
At your house.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't even drown out the sound in my house either.
Not even with the wireless
My
headphones.
brother.
Yeah, the big thing when I was growing up without any TV, it was reading underneath your covers with the flashlight.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, being real sneaky.
I still do that sometimes.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Happy
Mom
for
would
you.
get yelled at for staying up till like 3 in the morning reading. Her dad would come in and be like, Carrie, quit reading! Mom loves to read.
Yeah. Mine too. Okay. Okay, Tina. Just calm down, boy.
So, this is a question we've been asking everybody.
Yeah.
How does the word old make you feel?
Well, if you look at the life, like a young man told me this a while back. If you look at your life expectancy, if you get one of those sliding tapes, you know, and then you look at inches for the age, you know, and you get up, most people die. You know, I mean, when you get to be my age, there's not much of that tape left, you know, before us. You know.
Lord falls.
And I tell my son that, and he looks at it, just rolls his eyes. You know, I said, well, "You got to enjoy your life now. You know, you're in the prime of your life." I said, "I'm towards the way out here, towards the end. You know."
Here's our visual aid.
Right. So anyway,
See how far it gets.
It's holding up.
right. I'm here at 64, and if you look at how much is gone already, and then the average age is, what, 72 or something like that? You know, there's not very much left.
Okay, show us on the screen there, Mark, how much the difference is between.
Oh, touch it.
Oh dear.
64.
You better make it happen, buddy.
There's not much left. And you know, it's the older you get, the more people that you know have died. You know, I mean, and my dad lived to be 92, and he said that the problem with his life in his 90s was that all his friends were already gone. You know, so.
Which I feel like contributes to
Find one you know will live.
you dying too.
Well,
Just
this
do
is
it.
really
Like that
good
song.
about this intergenerational thing, because if you have friends intergenerationally, all your friends won't be your age. You'll
Yeah,
mix,
yeah, that's
and
true.
pretty soon you'll have friends that are younger.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
then your younger friends will cry too.
Yeah. Well, we went to Hawaii
That's okay.
a couple weeks ago, and my daughter brought an 86-year-old elder from a Haida elder from Hawaii,
Mhm.
and she couldn't walk very well. We had to get a wheelchair for her, but she had the greatest time of her life.
So, do you feel the need for a better connection between the youth of Cordova and the older generation?
Yeah, I think so.
And how do you feel, or like, what's a good way to bridge that gap?
Well, that's a good question. I don't, you know, I don't really know how to answer that, but I guess, you know, if you look at the youth today, is they're you know, they can't see anything in front of them because they're texting other people. I mean, I walked out in the airport, I'm looking out for this one, looking out for, you know, I mean, so they're really unaware of what they're
You know what a
surrounding.
bad thing is now? They can like see like a couple inches in front of them and they'll know.
Oh.
You know?
Really?
Yeah.
No, I don't
I do
know.
that sometimes.
I don't know how you would bridge that gap. Seems like the biggest meeting place in Cordova is the post office. I mean, that's, you know, where you're actually interacting with people you haven't seen for a while.
So the youth should just work in the post office.
Do you help carrying that to your car?
I don't know.
Do you think, like, would you want to maybe teach people about hunting or trapping, things like that? Do you think that could help?
Yeah, possibly. But I gotta say that, you know, with the way I grew up hunting, fishing, and trapping,
It's different.
it's different than now.
Mhm.
So there's so many guidelines, rules, and regulations that it's almost discouraging to go out and make a living off the land, because people don't, I shouldn't say they don't want you to, but they're almost making it impossible to do that. You know, we got the fur market, you know, it used to be big money. You know, my dad was a trapper, and he could make money trapping. Now, today, with the price of gas and the equipment it takes to go trapping, you know, there's no money in it. People are just doing it for sport, you know. And, you know, the Chinese came on and started buying a lot of fur, and they're the main fur market that, you know, has got the price back up to where, you know, we can make money trapping, but then with Trump in there, everything's gone down the tube, you know, so, and, you know, guiding, you know, they've got that all sewed up. There's so many rules and regulations. And like I told your mom this afternoon, I said, if you look at it, people that go to school, get an education to be an attorney, they go to Juneau. They get elected to the legislature or whatever down there, and they're the ones that are writing all the laws, rules, and regulations, you know. And just things are, it's a lot harder to live that type of lifestyle that was here 50 years ago today, because you'd have somebody saying, oh, you shouldn't be doing that or something, you know. It's just, and you know, the other thing, looking at the state of Alaska, I used to get so upset with people that were saying that, you know, this place is going to end up like Los Angeles, or this place is going to, you know, where I come from, that's what this place is going to end up looking like. And I'd say, well, go to Seattle sometime on a clear night and take a flight from Seattle to Anchorage and look out the window and just look at how populated Alaska is, you know, between those 2 points. I said, you can go for minutes and hours without ever seeing a light down there. You've got all this land with nobody on it. You know, maybe the population will be concentrated in communities, but you aren't going to see the whole state of Alaska inundated with people because it's so remote and inaccessible. You know, so it's, you know, when people say that, it just frustrates me. You know that, you know, there's a lot of country in Alaska, and I've watched the Alaskans, that TV program where they're way up on the Arctic slope up there, and there are only 8 families, 8 cabins, and when they die, there's going to be nothing, no more people up there. Why? What? Who's making these rules? That's not right. You know, why can't somebody go up there and live up there and live that lifestyle? You know, and it's the same thing out here in the Copper River Delta. You know, if you look at it, I talked to Robert today at the airport. I said, I just came from Hawaii. And I said, I've been going to Hawaii for almost 50 years. I said, I can remember when there was only one stoplight going on. And I said, there was a lot of locals in different areas. I said, now everywhere you go, there's 2 lanes of traffic going both directions. There's stoplights everywhere. And you try and find out where the locals are, they're hidden off away someplace. But the infrastructure in Hawaii is just for tourism. It's not for the local people. And that's what I'd hate to see out here on the Copper Delta, because I feel like in the summertime that's the way it is. Yeah. And that all this improvements on the Delta, it's not for me, not for you. And I told Robert that. I said, I really feel like, you know, looking at this, and as for so many years that I have, is that everything that's going on here is for tourism and it's for sport fishing. And I said, and it's going to be detrimental to the commercial fishing, you know, because, you know, those populations can only handle so much pressure. But I forgot what the question was again, and I'm going off on a tangent.
I don't even remember what it was either. We were talking about bridging the gap, and you mentioned hunting and fishing, and then we talked about
Hunting and fishing.
yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about.
But, you know, and it seems like, you know, as far as the trapping goes, that everybody that's out there trapping is just a recreational thing. They aren't making any money. You can't make a living at it the way you used to be able to, you know. So another example is the marine mammals. I mean, there's a lot of seal hides and sea otter hides floating around out there in the bay, you know, that are, you know, that should be utilized that aren't. That
From
is-
starvation.
well, some of them are, you know, well, I've done a lot of work with sea otters, but there's a lot of problems there with when you talk to the fish processors, where 20% of the salmon that's coming into the plant is seal bit. It's downgraded to number 3, or they have the cart.
20%? Wow.
It's a high percentage, and you talk to the fishermen that are on the Copper River Delta by themselves. It's almost impossible to fish in the summertime because there's so many seals on their gear that they, you know, if they don't pick it every 15 minutes, the seals are getting half of their fish or more.
Do you think that's like an increase, definitely, compared to like?
It's got to be. I mean, you know, and I've heard some population estimates on the copper that there's 5,000 seals from Miles Lake to the ocean. And, you know, it sounds like a lot, but it could be true. And if you figure out how many pounds of salmon they're eating a day, they aren't up there just to be up there. They go up there when the hooligans show up, and then they stay until the salmon show up. I mean, they got to be eating fish in there.
You mean from the ocean to Miles Lake in the river?
In the river.
Yeah.
5,000?
5,000. Yeah.
That's
Wow.
insane. And they have that, I don't know if it's the Science Center or Fish and Game or who, but they've got that salmon counter base out there on the other side of the $1 Million Bridge.
Right.
And they say they see a lot of seals go through there.
We saw
Yeah.
them when we were.
Well, I brought it
Doesn't
up at
I think
advisory
it's-
board level to the state. I said, your commercial fishermen didn't even fish this summer. You know, so you had all these fish going up the Copper River. You counted them, but they didn't make it to the spawning beds. You know, you had a personal use fishery up there that harvested 3 times more than they ever harvested before. You had subsistence fishermen that, you know, caught more fish than they've ever seen, you know, but you still didn't get your escapement without a commercial fishery. So I said, is there a possibility, these are things that you got to look at, is there a possibility between the counter and Abercrombie Rapids that seals, that there's a large population of seals up there that are getting those fish above the counter that, you know, that
I'd
are
say no.
I
disappearing.
never even considered that.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's pretty crazy to me how far up they go.
Yeah,
They go like all the way like into the lake, which just is mind blowing to me
yeah.
that they're that keen on it.
I've seen them all the way up to Woods Canyon, you know, which is 80, well, it's over 100 miles to the ocean. Yeah.
Insane.
Are we ready for the last question?
Yeah.
Or we'll gotta stop it first.